Hi, welcome Tom Karako from the Center for Strategic and International Studies.
Always a pleasure, thank you.
You attended the fire symposium down at Fort Sill this past week, and so would love to hear what some of the conversations were down there, starting perhaps with some program updates. There's a lot of different fires programs and missile defense programs that we are both tracking very closely. So what's the latest on some of these? I think the integrated fire protection capability, indirect fire protection capability is one of those that I think was mentioned quite a bit down there. So talk about where that program is and if you, in your opinion, is reaching some setbacks there.
Yeah, so look, this was the fire symposium at Fort Sill, which is of course where the Ukrainians just trained on Patriot, and now they're deployed. This is the center of the universe for both offensive and defensive fires, in the first instance for the U.S. Army, so your HIMARS and such, but also for all things air and missile defense. So the Center of Excellence for fires broadly is there, and also now the new counter UAS university is located there for the Joint Force as well. So look, it was a great conference, lots of senior Army leadership there, and lots of discussion. And which I think was most interesting is kind of the broad strategic changes that kind of reflect, I would say, the primacy of fires. Right. And you really heard some Army leadership talk about how, just last year we were talking about fires to support maneuver, and now it's maneuver to support fires, and kind of allowing that to sink in. And it's kind of a reflection, I would say, a confirmation of the primacy of offensive fires and air defense in Ukraine. So think HIMARS and NASAMS and such, and that kind of thing.
Exactly. You have a report coming out on Putin's missile war, and a lot of these concepts are, some of the inspiration for this. It's not that we weren't thinking about it before, the Army wasn't thinking about it before, but obviously now you're getting a lot of confirmation that this is some of these concepts, that's the direction that you need to go. So talk about what you're seeing in Putin's missile war and how that is going to be shaping what the Army chooses to do. And what
Look, this is my colleague Ian Williams, who authored this report that came out today, May 5. It's a great report. I encourage your viewers and listeners to check it out. Essentially, it kind of pulls together everything that's out there in terms of both what Russia has been firing, from where to where, the effects, and kind of analyzing and chewing on it, and coming up with some conclusions about perhaps why Russia wasn't more successful in suppressing Ukrainian air defenses. Narrator has a lot to do with combined arms. It has a lot to do with the principles of deception and distribution and mobility. If you move things around and the Russians don't have that ability to update their targeting, then you're going to be able to survive. And that actually is, I would say, a reason for optimism, because, as you know, the several services have been prioritizing distributed operations over the past several years. I think that kind of reflects some foresight in the operational concepts that the services are doing. So it also talks about, Ian Williams' report also talks about kind of the effects, and despite the fact that the Ukrainians' air defense is so limited, despite the fact that it's kludging together Spanish Hawks and a handful of American and Dutch and German Patriots and Iris-Ts. I mean, it is far from an integrated air missile defense as we would like. It still has a pretty good impact, and it's been able to impede the successful suppression, the successful targeting on the part of the Russians. So the Russians have not been able to get anything like air superiority. That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
Back to General Milley, none of this matters if you're dead, and that's why you need air defense. And you're seeing that in high relief in Ukraine.
Okay. Is there anything that you'd recommend that the U.S. military send to Ukraine, seeing how Putin is waging its missile war on Ukraine? Anything that they need that we're not sending over?
Look, it's a challenge. It's a trade-off. We're going to be hard pressed to give up enormous quantities of Patriot capacity and other higher end things, because as much as I believe that it is absolutely a national interest,
thin.
we also need to retain some of the higher end capabilities for deterring things in the Pacific. There's a lot of noise about giving, for instance, the Ukrainians ATACMS, but you'd have to wrestle some combatant commanders to the ground to get those ATACMS rounds away from them. This is just I would say, unfortunate reality on the basis of kind of deprioritizing munitions production low these many years. And as you know, you can't swing a 155 shell in Washington, D.C. now without hitting some press story about munitions production shortfalls or some think tank report about it. And so
Absolutely.
official Washington has added a new word to their vocabulary, the word munitions, but it's going to take some time to get there. And you brought up M-SHORAD. I didn't adequately respond about M-SHORAD a minute ago, but the Army's replenishment rates, the timeline, we're talking late 2020s for the replenishment and 2030s for the M-SHORAD replacement.
Yeah.
You know, it's both understandable, but also kind of far from optimal.
Right, and when you say M-SHORAD replacement, you mean the Stinger missile
the Stinger
replacement.
and the Stinger replacement.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Tom, for taking the time.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.